there, fans of the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. This is Kevin from the Super Fun Time Show, and today I wanted to talk about, the topic that everyone talks about, Survivor 50. Survivor 50, the big returner season that Jeff Probst has been hyping up for quite a while. And, we all have our different lists, all the people we want to see come back because we personally just love them. The people that we think deserve it because they're like the all-stars of the new era, the ones that need to be back on the television screen if there's any kind of God or justice in this world. But today, I actually wanted to give a list of 5 players that I think I would like to have back for Survivor 50 or honestly any returner season because, at its core, Survivor is all about storytelling. And I think there are 5 people that I've identified, and not only 5. Today, it's only 5, but there's way more people, obviously. But today, these are the 5 people that I'm identifying as people who I think need to finish the story. They have something that they've given us on screen, but I feel like there's another leg. There's another leg to their journey. And I want to talk about who those 5 are and some of the justification as to why I think those 5 should be it. Now, before we get into it, make sure to hit the subscribe button because I love talking about Survivor. I love talking about Survivor with all of you. And if there's any video topics you'd like to discuss or maybe even do like a live or something like that where we can talk about it together, let me know down below in the comment section. But getting into the actual video itself, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I'm a WWE fan. And for anyone out there who isn't aware, in the last year, there was a big story with a wrestler named Cody Rhodes. He's a guy who was basically not very highly regarded. He left his company, WWE. He went and built himself up in real life as a big figure, and he came back and he wanted to finish the story that his father began a long time ago as a wrestler. He never won the main championship of wrestling, and he was always aligned, but he never did it. And this past year, his son finished the story. He won the title for the Rhodes family. And that made me think a lot about some of these new era players that need to finish their own story for a season 50 for one reason or another. And I'm going to go through my 5 and tell you who and why I think they need to finish their story. The first one I'm going to get out of the way is Jesse Lopez. Jesse Lopez, the reason why I'm getting him out of the way is 1, he's the thumbnail of this video, so I don't want anyone to be waiting till the last one and going like, well, obviously it's Jesse. But 2, he's also probably the most obvious pick for a returner season. Jesse Lopez of Survivor 43 Octopus Island played arguably the most flawless game in the entirety of the new era. The only thing that didn't go his way was going into fire making. In Survivor 43's Final 4, he lost to the Fire King, Mike Gabler, and you could argue that was his only flaw, was that his threat level was so high at that point that if he didn't win immunity, he was going into the fire making portion. And obviously, if he didn't win, he was going to lose the game. And that's what happened. Nobody was looking to write down his name. He didn't have to win immunity challenges. And people were literally giving him immunity idols. Not just 1, 2. He got at least 2. And then he used one of them to vote out his own ally with his own idol. It's mind-blowing how well Jesse played the game and managed his threat level to a degree that even the alligator would cream in his pants thinking about it. And it's fascinating. He would have won the game 8-0. No matter who he was against at that Final 4, he would have won the game 8-0. But it just didn't quite happen. And the way Jesse ended it all, despite playing a great game, despite going out, putting everything on the table, I don't think he's shown everything he has. And most importantly, I want to know if he has. I think there's still a possibility that he could improve on this gameplay. Going into a season 50, if I start to make a list, there's still maybe threats that are being a Survivor 50 cast list that will be considered larger threats than himself, especially someone like D. Valadares plays. I mean, I think D will be here and somehow Jesse will be here, even though they both play great games, but I would probably say Jesse did even better. So I think there is huge potential for him to come back and basically show us that he is the ass kicker that I think he is. He's the guy on this list that I think has almost no flaws. But I think the fact that he has no flaws makes part 2 so much more interesting. And honestly, I don't think it's over for him. Second on this list, from Survivor 45, Bird Island, we have Katurah Tops. The Katurah, don't call me a lawyer, Tops, is a person that was on Survivor 45 that I wasn't super into in the beginning. Katurah was doing a great job. She has all the basic skills, I think, to be good at Survivor, to be great at Survivor. I think she is incredibly intelligent. I think she's a great listener. She's decent at challenges. People seem to like her a lot. The problem is, as we learned throughout the season we learned that she hates Bruce. And we learned about that often and we were reminded of it all the time. And it seemed like for a long portion of time, this incredibly beautiful, smart, intelligent, kind woman who had amazing potential to win the game and become a big character. Mostly what I feel like I learned about her was she hates Bruce. How do I get Bruce out of here? Even to the point where it was a detriment to her own game, in my opinion, is that she just said, I will not trust Bruce. I will not work with Bruce. And I think that was a huge disservice to Katura. I think Katura in a different environment and no Bruce, which is kind of a weird, stipulation on this thing, can really show that Katura has so much more to her overall game, than what we got in Survivor 45. Now, I get it. It's a large pizza pie. In Survivor 45, we had a lot of people we were trying to highlight for a lot of different reasons. Jake had his moments. Austin had his moments. Dee has moments. Drew has all of them. There was a lot of them. They were all great. Emily Flippin. How can we forget Emily Flippin? But Katura was someone who I thought, not from a gameplay standpoint, although there were issues there, that I'm putting her on this list. It was purely from a character standpoint. I think the story they told of Katura is this is a woman who does not want to deal with this guy in particular. This guy has lived rent-free in her head. And I thought that was really unfair. During the airing, I'm a huge Bruce fan. I was on Bruce's side. But objectively, standing back after the season's over, why did they do this? Why did Katura have to be basically bootstrapped to Bruce and vice versa? I think it was unfair, and I think there's so much more in the next chapter for Katura that we need to see for Survivor 50, because she could win. She could win. I just thought it was a lot of cheap editing rivalries that we just didn't need, And I'm hoping for Survivor 50, something that used to fuel the old school game. They're not going to do that in Survivor 50 with these rivalries that are partially manufactured. So yes, love Katura. Give me some Katura. Number 3, we're actually going to take a step back to Octopus Island, and I'm going to talk about someone that probably a lot of people don't have on their returnee list, and that's Owen Knight. Owen Knight is, I think, most famously known as a guy who had almost nothing go his way. He had a long stretch of time, I think it was about 13 days, where he didn't have a single correct vote. Now, to be fair, it was only 4 tribal councils, but still, it had been a long time. He was left out of a lot of votes at the beginning of the merge period. And he's a guy who famously is known as kind of the Charlie Brown of the Survivor New Era. And what I mean by that is, Charlie goes to kick the football, and then it gets pulled out from underneath him very quickly, and Charlie Brown looks like a dope. Unfortunately, that's kind of Owen's reputation. And I look at Owen, the whole game, I look at Survivor 43, and I look at Owen as the human being, and I say, this guy has so much more to give to the game. If they reshuffled it all, and they put him back out there, wiped memories, Owen would do so much better. I'm incredibly convinced of that. I mean, aside from the fact that he was just a physical challenge beast. I mean, Baca thrived, and he was a large piece of that. Individual immunities, he had 3. And I thought that was something that should make him stand out, but a lot of people don't really think about it too much. I mean, you could look at Owen Knight in his game, and you could see, even though he was floundering as far as getting his footing in driving votes, that wasn't a thing that was hit for him, quite frankly. Ride or Die basically ruled the merge. However, you could see literal fire in his belly at different portions. This guy was fiending to get in there and get stuff done. I mean, the effort was never gone with Owen. It just didn't work out. And that could be said for a lot of different players. But I've also never seen someone get so fired up and have the ball taken from his hands at the last second so much like Owen, where they just started throwing rocks into the ocean and chopping whole trees down basically because they just got robbed.
The latest example of Charlie Brown getting the football yanked out from under him and me just kicking out air and falling flat on my back.
Every chance he had to move forward, he couldn't get it. He's a tragic character in his previous story. However, I think he become a legitimate hero in the next section of this book. And he's someone I think desperately, despite finishing in the final 3, he will have improved in leaps and bounds if he gets to play one more time in the viewpoint of the Survivor community. I'm telling you, this guy will be a titan if he gets to play again. Number 4 on the list is actually someone who recently just finished playing a Survivor. That is Teeny. Teeny from Survivor 47 is someone that initially I was going to put on here. I almost put Sam on here coincidentally because Sam's another kind of Charlie Brown type character like Owen Knight. But Teeny is kind of along the same vein, but I think there's a difference in their story versus maybe some of these other ones. And that's why I want to include Teeny on this list. Aside from Teeny being incredibly intelligent and very smart in understanding the social dynamics of other people, and also very good with their hand gestures, which I love, I think Teeny had some different barriers that other players didn't necessarily have going on that she did. We saw two defining things that really occurred. First one being that I think, Teeny's youth was really a big factor in their gameplay. I mean, Teeny going through the game as the youngest one and really having a bit of a social stake in everybody's game, which is very impressive. I thought that was something that was a hindrance to some degree, their youth, at least as far as their perception and being taken seriously, being included in actual votes by the end. I think that was a little bit of an anchor. Also, one of the biggest things is their gender identity. I mean, that was talked about pretty heavily and is associated with maybe the biggest singular moment of the season, which was the big crash out around episode 7 or so. Teeny comes back to camp and just starts mocking Sam for being like a good guy or whatever. All that's in the past now. Sam and Teeny love each other. I think everyone needs to get past that. However, that was an important note, and I think the problem is most people leave the season thinking of Teeny in that way. They think of Teeny as like, to some degree, someone who was left out of the votes and got, jerked around quite a bit. When reality, I thought they were going to be a godfather figure to start the game. I really thought Teeny was going to run Lavo and then was going to go into the merge and really dominate. Unfortunately, Teeny's like stock went down kind of like that. And I think there's more there, especially considering some of the stuff internally that was worked out on the show. I think if Teeny were to be able to flip the page, they would do so much better next time. I don't think they'll need to be defined as the person who crashed out on Sam. I think that's really unfair. And because a lot of people definitely still hold that. But what we can't forget is Teeny is brilliant. Teeny almost made the final 3. It was one fire being made that with the wind as a paid actor that left Teeny out of the finals. Now, to be fair, Teeny wasn't going to win the game or anything. Rachel had that locked up. However, I think Teeny did such an awesome job that people are going to forget about it. And if they get a chance to go back and play again, I think Teeny's going to have much more favorable results. Not only as far as a game player, but I think with fans. I think you're going to see a change in Teeny, even though it wasn't even that long ago. Teeny only played like a year ago, and I still think that Teeny is going to progress even that much more. They're just going to do so much more phenomenally, and I think we'll walk away with it as a better character and them as a better human being. And I also like Teeny talking with their hands a lot. And finally, the last one for this list, number 5, from Survivor 46. I mean, I think a lot of you probably expected the popular Q, or possibly even Prince Charlie, who was so cruelly robbed by the evil Queen Maria at Final Tribal Council. Well, sorry, Charlie. I'm choosing the evil queen for this list. Maria Shrime Gonzalez is definitely my pick as someone who needs to finish the story. I mean, I compared Cody Rhodes in the beginning of this video to these 5 players, and if there's one that I'm comparing it to the most, it is Maria. And I'll put it plainly, the reason why Maria is on this list and deserves to be on it, maybe more than anyone else, is because she's the only one I can think of that got straight up robbed. Now, I love Liz, I love Kenzie of Survivor 46. Love you both. However, from a competition standpoint, those two collectively boned Maria. Now, is that their fault? No, that's Jeff Probst's fault. Jeff Probst, in that moment, at the Final 5 Immunity Challenge, he should have stepped in when Liz ran to go get Kenzie's board and brought it back and said, no, you can't do it. Precedent had already been set. In Survivor South Pacific, Albert and Sophie, they tried to team up on Ozzy around the same time in the game.
Drop your stack and come pick up my pieces. Albert, just drop your stack.
Let me make it easy for you. There is no helping in this challenge. If you want Ozzy out of this game, beat him.
So I made them do it solo, no helping. And that's not what happened to Maria in 46. And the reason why that's so significant is, at that point, Maria was one half of the most dominant pair in the game. She was considered the godfather figure at that point. So winning immunity not only would have catapulted her to the Final 4, where she would have had a huge chance to at least make fire, if not win immunity, but At that final five, if she had won it, she would have had 4 individual immunities. This woman already had 3. Nobody was even touching her at this point. If she had gotten that 4th, she would have been tied for the most ever for female players. And that's what Rachel just tied this past season. And realistically, if she made it to Final Four, really good shot, she would have won the 5th one. The only female that could have ever won 5 individual immunities in the history of the game. So, in my opinion, she was robbed from a competitive standpoint. I mean, if you're a fan of Charlie and think that Charlie should have won the game, then you should be rooting for Maria to come back. Because quite frankly, they were the most dominant alliance, and Maria was the one who was taking all the bullets for Charlie. Charlie's game was not seen by the players out there on the island. Maria's was. And she had potential to play arguably the most dominant game in the new era if she had made it through and frankly not been cheated at the final 5. And considering she played such an amazing game, and Jeff Probst probably didn't fairly call it in that moment, she was robbed of history in a few different ways. I see Maria, like many others, as a warrior in Survivor, and I think anyone who says she isn't, they're not really putting their thinking caps on. And from a storytelling standpoint, she became the big bad wolf to some degree, and that's fine. We need big bad wolves in stories. How lame is it if the big bad wolf is just poisoned in the night? And that's what I kind of saw like Kenzie and Liz teaming up to beat Maria as. It was great TV. It was great TV, and that's why Probst let it happen, I'm sure. He didn't think about competition in the moment, and still he said, yo, this is going to be amazing TV. As a warrior, I think you want a clean death, so to speak. And I don't think Maria got that. I really don't. So I think she's worthy of coming back. We got more to see from Maria. All right, but that's going to do it. Who do you think should have their story continue on? There's some honorable mentions, no question, that I would like to just shout out real quick. I think Mike Turner is someone from Survivor 42 that needs another shot. I think the game was his in 42, and for some reason, it just got fumbled at Final Tribal, and I think there's more there. Emily Flippen from Survivor 45, I love and adore her. I think we saw such progression from the beginning in episode 1 to the end of her vote out, and I think there's even more for Emily to go forward. But that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, everyone. You take care, and goodbye.